happen during meditation. But it reminds me, sometimes we hear emergency sounds. We hear the EMT folks, the ambulances. We hear the sound of emergency, the fire trucks. It's an interesting word, emergency. Years ago, I received the awareness from a wonderful author and teacher, Stanislav Grof. And he's still out there doing his wonderful work. He wrote a book entitled Spiritual Emergency. And the idea is, often our spiritual emergence looks like a time of emergency. It can look like collapse in our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our mental well-being, our financial well-being. It can look like collapse. And yet, the teaching is, the word emergency means something powerful is emerging. Something powerful wants to emerge. And how many of us, hands raised, how many of us have had our lives turn, 360 turn, and we're in emergency, and it turned out to be one of the most powerful times of our life for awakening and transformation. So it's fun to honor all the feelings we have in times of emergency. Some, right now in the world, some of us think we're in a time of emergency. So it's important to remember that out of emergency, there is something powerful emerging. Okay, so that wasn't part of the lesson today, so Spirit had something else in mind. When the phone rings, pay attention. When the emergency sound happens, pay attention. Okay, so we're here today to talk about the grateful heart. And by the way, we want to thank Bunny Linen for creating these T-shirts. Unity, Myrtle Beach. It says, Spirit is moving and so are we. You too can have one of these shirts in the bookstore. $19.99? Is that what it is?
Well, yes, it can be.
Yeah. So the money goes into general fund. You can buy one of these T-shirts. These are fun. And if you want to look at our vision board up here that the prayer team for our capital campaign put together, it's all up here, y'all. Holding the vision. So, grateful heart. Today we want to feel our grateful heart for all of those who have served this country and all countries in their armed services. We have many feelings and ideas and perspectives about war, about the way countries operate, and specifically our own country right now, many feelings about what we should be doing. No matter how we feel about all of that, we want to honor those who are willing to serve. Thinking of young Ryan today, Kevin's son, we all know and love Ryan. He and his beautiful beloved, they're serving our country in the armed forces. So we want to remember all those who are serving now, all those who have served in the past. Our veterans here today, would you please stand and let us bless you and welcome you. Remembering all of our ancestors, all of our beloveds. A few years ago, you may remember, for those of you who were here, David was a part of facilitating the traveling Vietnam Wall here in Myrtle Beach. Another Unity minister came in and they did a whole ceremony welcoming the veterans home. And most of those veterans at that event were Vietnam veterans. So being welcomed home was very significant and powerful. Rolling Thunder, the motorcycle group, they ushered the semi-trailer into town, setting up the wall. It was all very powerful and exciting. We witnessed many healings at that wall. And saw many former veterans, their families, and children finding the names of their grandparents, their grandfathers on the wall. Our little granddaughter at the time was 3-4 years old. I looked off it yesterday for the photo and had a lovely walk down memory lane, but I never found the photo of Cece. Back then, she wanted to be called Cece. She now, at age 12, has announced she wants to be called Cecilia. Back then she was Cece. She heard her granddad say over and over to the veterans, welcome home. Thank you for serving. Welcome home, welcome home. Well, her little 3-year-old mind, she caught hold of that, and right in the middle of the ceremony, she started walking up to these big, giant, Cece, these big, giant men in their leather, their chains, their beards, this rolling thunder. And she goes up to them, welcome home. She'd shake their hands. It was quite powerful. Well, Cecilia, she's 12. She turns 13 in July. And when she first turned 12, she wrote this poem. And I want to share it with you today because our children are getting these things a lot earlier than most of us got this awareness. She wrote this poem that's been published in an anthology of poems. In times of war, hiding's in vain. People wear masks to hide their pain. Behind the blood, behind the flames, behind the uniforms, they're all the same. Yeah. Behind the uniforms, they're all the same. So we take a deep breath. And we know that our human family is in a time of awakening. And there will be a time I will add this prophetic voice to all of our other voices and consciousness at this time. There will come a time when the stories being told around the campfire, around the dining room table, are stories that start something like this. In the long, long ago, there was a time when human beings constantly killed each other. In the long, long ago, there was a time when people did not know they were all one family. They did not know that they were all connected. They did not know that they were all made of the same creative presence. In the long, long ago, people felt separate from one another and created enemies instead of friends of one another. That was a long, 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 long time ago. Things are different now. These are the stories that will be told. I know this. Right now, we're still in the time of envisioning that to be true. I didn't get this when I was 12. God bless our children. Black Elk said it in another way. The wonderful Native American teacher, he had a vision. And he said, and while I stood there, I saw more than I could tell, and I understood more than I saw. For I was seeing in a sacred manner the shapes of all things in the Spirit, and the shape of all shapes, as they must live together like one being. We are one collective energy. We can't get away from that. And yet we keep trying to separate out from one another. He said, the human heart is a sanctuary. It's what David was talking about earlier. You didn't know about this quote, did you? Talking about being the sanctuary of the grateful heart. The human heart is a sanctuary, the center of which there is a little space, wherein the Great Spirit dwells. And this is the eye of the Great Spirit. So let's take a deep breath into that. Just breathe into that idea that within us is the Great Spirit, is the eye of the universe. Through us, watching. The way Ken Carey said it in his wonderful book, Millennium, which is pure poetry, he said, there is something huge looking through our eyes. There's something huge listening through us. There's something huge present in us. The grateful heart. Ponder this idea. The grateful heart, the one presence, lives in the core of you. Even on your worst days, even on the days when you're complaining the most, the one presence is living in you. Even on the days when I most forget and want to hit the pause button on everything, one presence still lives in me. The eye of the universe lives in me. Even when these human eyes can only see the wacko-ness. That's a legitimate term. Wacko-ness. So I've been talking about Thomas Berry in my last few talks because I'm rereading one of his books, and I just love him so much. Besides being a Catholic theologian, he was in fact a renegade Catholic theologian. And we need those renegades, don't we? He's been the teacher and mentor for many renegade Catholic theologians now. But most importantly, in my mind, he was an ecologist. He was a cosmologist. He saw the world in terms of not just the earth, but in terms of the entire multiverse. So when he paused to honor the ancestors, he went all the way back. He said, to the children who swim beneath the waters of the sea and to those who live in the soils of the earth. Talk about going back to the ancestors. We bow to esteemed teachers and we bow to ancestor galaxies and blue-green bacteria. Don't you love it? When you say, oh, today in church we honored the ancestors. Oh, you know your grandparents or your grandmothers, your grandfathers? Oh, yeah. All the way back to the blue-green algae. All the way back to the soil, bacteria, all the way. Think of all the work that's been going on in the universe that you could be here at Unity this morning. Wow, talk about the ancestors. So I heard someone say a few days ago, the ancestors live in our blood. Of course, that's true. Our DNA. We're encoded with all the wisdom that's been evolving throughout the endless ages. And here we are as agents, as facilitators of awakening consciousness. For the first time, as far as I can tell, in our human history, en masse, we are conscious of our own evolution. Now, there's always been a few. But as far as I can tell, en masse, in the huge collective, there's more and more of us than ever before, realizing that we are participating in and observing our own unfoldment and awakening.
All over the world.
All over the world. We can't stop it. We either participate in it or we make ourselves miserable by trying to resist it. I, for one, vote for non-misery. So we're talking about the grateful heart. And Thomas Berry said, bow to your esteemed teachers. Just speak out a name right now of an esteemed teacher that you've had in your life. Think of them now, wherever they are. It could be grandmothers, grandfathers. It could be your first grade teacher. It could be your TM coach. It could be your children. Who are your esteemed teachers? Bless them from afar. Bless them right now. We can't do it without our mentors and teachers. How many of you think you need to be doing this alone? Can't be done. No, thank you. So one of my esteemed teachers, you've heard me mention her name many times, Hilda Charlton. Years ago, early 80s, 80, 81, I was working in my garden, growing award-winning collard greens. I was working in my garden, and she had just passed the year before, and I thought, Hilda, I wish so much that I could talk with you on the phone the way I used to talk with you. And in my mind's hearing, I heard her voice say, well, tell me what you want to say now. Oh, okay. So I came to be familiar with what I now call heart letters. Letters from the heart. We can communicate with, I tell you, I lived it, I breathed it, I know it's true. We can communicate with our beloveds, our teachers, our parents, our children, those who've gone before us. The consciousness doesn't stop, and neither does the communication. How many of you know this to be true? It's one of the most delightful things that I ever experienced and know about. It takes a lot of the sting and heartbreak out of the separation we call death. Because there is no separation, it's just we change form. Yeah. So, heart letters, thinking of our ancestors today. Those that you would love to be able to pick up the phone, or wait a minute. It's no longer that. And just have a conversation. Well, you can. Thank them, bless them. Let them feel your love. You can certainly feel theirs coming back to you. So the grateful heart. In everything we give thanks. Now what the heck is that about? In everything we give thanks, you mean for the wackiness in the world right now I have to give thanks? Or I have to give thanks when there's uncertainty in my life or the world? Wait a minute. I have to give thanks even if there's a hard diagnosis or a relationship collapse, or I have to give thanks in everything? Well, the idea is we don't have to give thanks for a collapsing economy, or we don't have to give thanks for any wackiness that goes on in any government anywhere. We don't have to give thanks for unkindness or confusion. What we give thanks for is this. We give thanks for the ever-present creative energy and substance out of which we design our world. We give thanks that we're a part of a field of energy that we participate with in creating our world. We give thanks for the substance, the energy of the field out of which we create. So, it's so silent in here right now, I can only assume everybody's asleep. Amen. Thank you! So, let's go back to basics. There's a story in the scriptures about, there's actually a couple of stories about the fishes and the loaves. Apparently it happened twice. Jesus is out preaching, and imagine yourself, you're Jesus. You've been teaching all day, you're in the hot desert, and there's no air conditioning. And 5,000 people show up at church that day. Okay. And there's no potluck. And Jesus did something extraordinary, and we want to break it down a little bit metaphysically. He took a couple of fish and a couple of pieces of bread, and he did something extraordinary. He looked up. Now back then they used to talk in terms of heaven is up and hell is down. God bless Australia, because they're in a heck of a lot of trouble. He looked up. So what does that mean metaphysically? What? He looked to the Spirit. He looked to the Spirit. He looked to the higher perspective. He didn't look at, uh-oh, I'm in this tiny little circumstance and there's only a little bit of substance to work with. A few fish, a few loaves of bread. He didn't look at that. He looked to the higher view. The scripture says, look unto the hills. Get the higher view, the higher perspective. So he looked up. And then he did something else remarkable. He gave thanks. Now, let me tell you what Eric Butterworth in his wonderful book, Spiritual Economics, says about this. He says he looked up and gave thanks. This was not reaching up to God, for Jesus said often, the kingdom of heaven is within you. What Jesus was doing was turning away from the appearance of lack. And he got the view from the top. If you want to see New York City, don't try to see it all from ground level. Go to one of the high buildings and look at how remarkable that city is from a high perspective. So, he turned away from the appearance of lack and got the view from the top. He was not giving thanks for the inadequate amount of food. He was not giving thanks for just a couple of fish and a couple of pieces of pita bread. He was giving thanks from his elevated consciousness. He was giving thanks from the view at the top. He did a strange thing then. He blessed the food. So first he looked up, then he gave thanks, then he blessed the food. Who wants to tell me, or all of us, the definition of the word blessing? The word blessing means, wait for it, this is so good. The word blessing means to confer prosperity upon. So, if I am sick in my body's sick, Paula can confer prosperous blessing of health on me. If my bank account is a little too low, Maria can confer a prosperous blessing of abundance on me. If I am lacking peace, if I'm in confusion or stress, Patty can confer a blessing of peace and well-being and balance on me. You see how that works? When you bless someone, you are conferring prosperity upon them. Is that fabulous? Whether it's increased health, increased finances, increased love, increased peace, we are conferring blessing upon one another. Conferring prosperity upon one another. Did you know you were doing that when you were blessing someone? Now, it doesn't count when you say, well, bless her little heart. That's not the blessing I'm talking about. So he looked up, he gave thanks, he blessed, and then what did he do? He said, spread this food out. Take it on out there into the crowd. Because he could have said, ooh, look at all this food. Call the 12 disciples, get this food, take it back to headquarters. We're going to need it later. No. He looked up, he gave thanks, he blessed, and then he said, now share it with the people. Instant manifestation. But here's what happens with prosperity. You can look up, you can give thanks, you can bless, but if you hoard it all for yourself, you stop the flow and it's done, the story's over. Boom. So, here's the formula for living in the grateful heart and watching the miraculous unfold within you and around you. We look up, we get higher perspective. We give thanks that we live in a prosperous universe out of which we have the faith to organize and create from the substance of this energy. It's amazing. We look up, we give thanks, we bless. We confer prosperity upon, and then we share. Is your hand up or are you giving thanks? Okay.
My hand is up. I would like to hear an example of conferring blessing in action.
Okay, we'll give you an example of conferring blessing in action. So this is a story that goes back 19 years, but now it has a present-day component. David and I, in a few weeks, are going to go to Oregon. We used to live there years ago. We're going to go to Ashland, Oregon. And there we have friends, an old community that we've known for many years. There's a woman there that we met 19 years ago. She found out we're going to be in Ashland in a few weeks. She said, this is really great because 19 years ago, on June 14th, you and David did a healing gathering. And in that healing gathering, her heart and her mind opened to healing. When David and I conferred prosperity through healing blessing and hands-on healing to her, her heart and mind seized on that, and chronic fatigue that had gone on for a decade, done. She wrote about it in a book later. 19 years have passed, by the way. She said, you're going to be here again. It's so wonderful on the anniversary. Now here's where it gets better. So that was conferring blessing for increased health. Here's where it gets better. in my mind. David and I are in current prayer constantly, really, of how to be in our ministry now. How is it supposed to look now in the world that's changing by the second? And because of her phone call and her email of the healing that happened 19 years ago, we're receiving some information, we're being informed about how 19 years ago connects to present moment and how that is to be included in our healing work. So the blessings, when we confer blessing, it's a non-stoppable, never-ending energy. You bless somebody for one time and you think that's it, that's done. The power of energy keeps going, 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 going. Is that a good example? In my mind it is. So he looked up, he gave thanks, he blessed, and he shared. Now think about something in your life, something in your circumstances about which there's been confusion or uncertainty or anxiety. Look up. Get the higher perspective. We only have one little perspective when we're looking right where we're standing. That's just one little perspective. Increase the space. Expand your view. Look up. Next thing, give thanks. I give thanks for the substance and the creative energy out of which I'm participating in creating my world. And I bless this circumstance, all the people who are involved in all the events of this circumstance. I bless, I confer prosperity upon. And then I'm able to share with the world from a balanced, centered place. It's a crazy world we live in, and yet we have solid, remarkable, miraculous formulas to live by. This is just one of them. I don't know if y'all are as excited about this as I am. I mean, if I was coming in from another planet and hear this stuff, I go, that's right, that's the way the universe works. Thank God you people are getting it. So here's how we'll close for this time. This is for me and David and all of us in here. With our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our grateful hearts. We're either participating in unfolding our healing, our wholeness, our regeneration as a species, or we're participating in the unkindness and the debilitating ways we hurt each other. Do y'all see it that way? I mean, we're either participating in unfolding wholeness or unfolding fear. And I first got that, by the way, from David Bohm, a very well-known quantum physicist. And in his lectures with Krishnamurti, Krishnamurti was waxing on with spiritual concepts, and this wonderful quantum physicist said, well, the way I see it is, we're either participating in the unfolding of wholeness, or we're participating in the unfolding of fear. And Krishnamurti said, yeah, that's right. Magnificent spiritual teacher, but we sum it up from a quantum physicist's mind because he understood energy and he understood the power of thought. We're a remarkable, remarkable creation, you know.
We are energy.
We are energy.
We are energy.
We are energy.
It's an ocean of energy. And that's how it all connects. We are energy beings. We are all connected to energy, living in a sea of energy, full of emotions and feelings. That's what we're working with. That's what Reverend Margaret's talking about, with the connections and the reference and whatnot. We are one. We're all one. We are the thought in the Creator's mind. We are the thought. Naked thoughts.
Thank you, Reverend Paula. Listen, a few weeks ago I was up here talking and I turned to you to back me up and you weren't there. We need somebody in that chair to back me up. Y'all, we're going to receive the offering now, and I wonder, is there anyone here who would like to do the receiving of the offering and blessing of the offering besides me? I would. Good. Come on up here. This Nicole from Montreal. And this is fun, by the way, y'all. Nicole and Connie are connected with a group that in the way back in my other life, I spoke twice at a healing conference with the group that you're a part of. Marilyn Rossner and her, just great. Okay, would you bless our offering?
Yeah, and I would tell you that we should bless before we get it, which it helps. So if you want to bring your hands up. We bless all people that can give and cannot give. All this is energy that we share and that we want to circulate to all of us. Thank you to all participating in this visible world and the invisible world to help us go through our lives and have abundance and prosperity. Thank you all. Thank you.
Abundance and prosperity. Thank you. So the offering blessing that we want to do before the band does a wonderful song, all together, please. Divine love in and through us blesses and multiplies all that we are, all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. We give in love and receive in joy. That's the truth.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Yeah. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. And everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Shine all over the world. I'm gonna let it shine. Shine all over the world. I'm gonna let it shine. Shine all over the world. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I just wanted to remind you that somebody walked up to me before service and said, "Why don't I ever see so-and-so anymore? Has she stopped coming to the church?" I said, "No, she comes to early service." So y'all know that we're doing an 8:45 service now, right? And some of us are here at 8:45, and some of us stay for second service. You know who you are. We're just the whole day. We're getting filled up with the Spirit. So, if you're not seeing somebody you're missing, they're in early service. Reminding you, this is our capital campaign basket. If you have a pledge card to put in here, this is where to put them. Okay, good ducking. Okay, I want to tell you that we're doing a meeting after service, the board and some of the growth and development team, so we will not do a connect the dots today. We'll re-instigate that soon. Any other announcements we've forgotten? No? Okay, let's move into our peace song. We sing it like a prayer because it is a prayer.
Everybody.
Everybody.